silent retreat. Here are my thoughts, here are my experiences over this long weekend. Before we crack on with this video, here's Winston playing with Winston. Winston's obviously becoming a popular name. So this was a long weekend. This wasn't Vipassana, 10-day long, etc., etc. But still, the experience was really interesting, enlightening, and actually liberating. And I think for many that try this, and this was my first time, they find it difficult even just to turn off their mobile phone for 3 days. Whereas I didn't. As soon as I arrived there, I turned off the phone, let everybody know where I was, and told them that I wasn't going to be available. And actually, that was the first liberating thing. It felt really good just to turn that off. Now, at the instruction by this wonderful lady that ran the course just outside of Frome, a lady by the name of Sian, as soon as she said, okay, it's silent practice from now, again, it felt almost a relief. I was looking forward to this. This is what I wanted to do, and I wasn't in any way anxious or apprehensive. And one of the first things I noticed, and I wrote a bit of a journal about my experience as well, and one of the first things I noticed was that when you're surrounded by other humans, in part there is this Britishness, but also I think it's just a natural human trait that it's almost impossible for most, when surrounded by other humans, not to acknowledge them. Even if you don't know them, you feel the need to say hello. You feel the need to smile, which are all wonderful things. But one of the first things I noticed was that it was this liberating experience that when I was surrounded by other people, I didn't need to say anything to them. I didn't need to talk to them. I didn't need to acknowledge them even. In fact, that's one of the things we were told. You're going to be given food, and you don't need to say thank you. You don't need to, the whole weekend is purely meant to be selfish. So you don't need to acknowledge others. And that was actually really quite liberating. I love that. We have this inconsequential language, don't we, when we're surrounded by other humans. Most of the time that language is unnecessary. Winston just having fun with the smaller dogs, who, as that lady said, small dogs always have something to say, which is quite funny. The second thing I noticed, that when you know that you don't have any form of distraction around you, of course there's no technology, I took off my watch, I wasn't aware of the time. Again, there's this, you almost immediately start focusing. It's much easier when you meditate, start focusing on the inner self, the feelings, the sensations. And so when I was better able to delve deep to those inner feelings, those sensations that you can start to create when you're meditating, it was a lovely experience, and I was able to sort of play around with it. I think this only comes after a prolonged period of time of meditating, of yoga, of many of the things that I do. I'm getting a real feel for those internal energies, the internal sensations, let's just call them that. I think you can probably apply lots of different labels to the things that I was feeling, but let's just call them sensations. Whatever they were, I was able to play around with them. At one point, I could feel it in my leg, and then I directed it more towards the upper part of my body. That was lovely. Oddly, what I also found was when you spend so much time in here, some interesting things occurred. So on both nights, I had a bit of a disturbed sleep. Now, could that be the building that I was in? I don't know. But I suspect it was more to do with the fact that, given the fact that we spent so much time in our mind, let's call it, that consumes a lot of energy. Both nights I immediately fell asleep early. I went to bed at 8:30 at one point, fell asleep at 9. Definitely when you're spending so much time meditating, doing yoga, qigong, it does consume energy, and I definitely felt that. And I was grateful for that. I mean, I still woke up at 5:30, in fact 5 o'clock on one morning, and although I knew I had yoga to do in the day, I still wanted to do my 5 Tibetan rites in the morning. I did a couple of rounds of Wim Hof, and actually I did try and meditate at that point, like I sometimes do, and just found it impossible at that time. And I suppose because of the day before, the experience that I had where I was going deep into the meditation, in the morning I find, I don't know about you, that my mind quite often wakes and it's racing with thoughts. And I just gave up on the meditation in the morning because it just wasn't working. I think I needed to do a few other things first to help calm the mind. The yoga, which was really good, this really slow practice of yoga where you're breathing into each move, and I suppose that's the same with all yoga, but this was just much sort of a dialed down version, a real slow, almost qigong-like yoga, and I loved it. That really helped set you up for the rest of the day. Now, the other thing I noticed was when I was fasted, I was better able to go deep, as it were, and start to feel those inner sensations. The organizer had laid on some incredible food. It was just beautiful kind of vegetarian food that of the sort of likes that I don't think I've had before. However, that was something else I found really interesting. So the whole idea of mindful eating. When you've got food laid out in front of you that's blimmin' tasty, and you try some mindful eating, it really makes you think about the food that you're presented with on a day-to-day basis. It really makes you think about where the food comes from. It does make you feel grateful for the fact that food is there, you know, in the Western world especially. It's, you know, whatever we want, we can grab. And it does make you think about the speed at which you eat, of course. Most of the time we do eat without thinking, don't we? It's almost, I think for a lot of us, when we're presented with a plate in front of us, we're almost thinking about what we're supposed to be doing after we've eaten. Oh, I must get back to this, or I've got to dash off to work, or whatever. We're not thinking about the food, and all we're thinking about is wolfing it down, almost as if we'd been starved for a few days. So mindful eating, I'd say, is a really good practice to build into your day. And the other thing, mindful walking, and I really love this, and I started to play around with it. So the whole idea of mindful walking, again, is, as the name suggests, you're zoning into that one action, that action of walking. So I did this barefoot on the grass, and I really focused on how my feet were splaying out in the grass and the sensation that I was experiencing from the ground, the leaves of grass, anything else that I was putting my foot on. But then also I started to play around with the balance. I wasn't instructed to do that, but I felt like doing it, and it really made me think that it, again, especially for those like me, you know, we're going to get closer and closer to 50 soon. When you hit 65, 70, your chances of a fall being mortal, I think, are entirely determined by your ability, the body's ability to balance. So this is where I really started to play around with that mindful walking that was so super slow that when I lifted one foot off the ground, you know, I took my time before the next step. I almost started to play around with the change of weight. You know, I moved backwards, moved the foot out, landed. You know, I did it really super slow, and I found it really interesting, and I'm going to play around with that a little bit more. And I think that's a really good exercise for everybody, but especially those that are approaching those later years, because it will help build and improve your balance, which I think is really key. In fact, I've already got some ideas. I'm gonna start chucking those into a few videos. Now, I mentioned Qigong earlier, and we practiced some of the 8 brocades. And if there's one thing that did, and it was really, it just made me think I need to do some more of the Qigong stuff. I absolutely love that. There's a chap actually in the tribe of evolutionaries, the Facebook group that I've created. Do come and join us there. And he has practiced martial arts throughout his life. One of those also linking to Aikido as well as karate, as well as Sistema and Qigong. And he's incorporated a lot of these practices into a new method called Threnergy. Really interesting stuff. I will probably do a video with him at some point next year. But the point I wanted to make here is that he introduced me to some Qigong not so long ago, and immediately it felt like it was the right thing for me to do. It felt like I was drawn to it. And again, this weekend, whenever we did some Qigong, it just felt so good. Maybe it's something to do with my mild obsession with Eastern arts. I don't know. Whatever it is, I really love doing it. I'm going to start doing some more. One of the things actually that does make me think of is that when you look at all these different methods, these ways of enhancing your life, you've got to be careful not to build in too much. You know, I am a bit like, is it a magpie or a blackbird? Whichever one that really likes shiny things. I'm a bit like that. You know, I hear about new ideas and I get all excited and think, oh, let's explore that. And I think it's fine exploring it. You've got to keep reminding yourself how much you want to build into your routine, because really, if you keep reminding yourself that the most important things are the push, pull, lift, being mobile, breathing, as long as you've got that in your day, you're going to be fine. That's all you need. So really, if you want to build anything else in, make sure it doesn't consume your day, as things quite often do with me, but also it doesn't consume your mind too much. You know, I think it'd be very easy to get overwhelmed by all these methods that are out there at our disposal. Now, the other thing I did whilst on this silent retreat was read The Power of Now again by good old Eckhart. And it is an amazing book. And I think what happens actually when you read it for the first time, depending on where your mind is at the time, it either doesn't resonate or it kind of confuses you. And I think the more you read it, and also the more you go down a certain path, the more it then begins to make sense. And of course, it totally made sense during this weekend, because it was all about being in the now, being present. And of course, when you're being mindful, that's exactly what you're doing. A creature in the undergrowth. One of the things that we were made to think about actually was to be aware of where your mind is at any one time. Your mind, regardless of how practiced you are, is going to drift. So it's interesting to start looking at and being aware of where it's drifting. Is it drifting, as mine often does, to the future? So I'm quite often thinking either about YouTube videos or LinkedIn posts, or even just future conversations with people that might or might not happen. You know, it's really silly. These things haven't happened, and yet I start to build these conversations up in my mind. Another thing that I occasionally do is obviously reminisce about the past. And I don't think there's anything wrong with reminiscing about the past, but it becomes a problem when you start thinking that the past was a better version of you, or that you had a better time, and that you're trying to, you would love to get back to that period, because of course the problem with that is that you can't go back. So there's no point kind of dwelling in that time. And of course you can also have these moments of thinking about yourself, about others. Again, let's remind ourselves these things happen. It's natural. This is what your brain will do. The point that I think Eckhart makes, and also those that are practiced in Buddhism or meditation, is that you just become aware of these thoughts. You become aware of the thinker. So in other words, when you get to a point where you're able to step outside of those thoughts and just be aware of them and just acknowledge them, they'll disappear. So give it a go. I think for those on that meditative path, I think it's kind of one of the things that are worth exploring. Just add it to the list of things to do and try it at some point. Whether or not I will do a Vipassana 10-day silence, I'd like to give that a go. Be interesting to see whether at some point your brain starts to feel an urge towards talking to other fellow human beings. For me, I didn't get that, and I wanted to stay in it. In fact, at the end of the course, the instructor did say, look, if you want to stay silent, then please do. And I sort of indicated that I wanted to do that. However, when I went to go and say goodbye to people, I just felt that urge to actually verbalize how grateful I was to be there. And So, but you know, as soon as I got back in the car, that was it. I was silent. I tried to remain silent for as long as I possibly could. There we are, my nice long ramble. Silent retreats, give them a go, or even just silent practice, give it a go. Evolution of Dave, signing off.